I'm writing my pre-show notes as we speak.
Nice. On this episode of the Armchair Coaching Podcast, we will be talking Navy football. All right, welcome back to the Armchair Coaching Podcast. We are doing yet another program profile, and today we're going to focus on the Navy Midshipmen out of Annapolis, Maryland. And so I'd like to introduce our guests, and first guest tonight is Coach Nick Bandstra. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Coach. My name is Nick Bandstra. I am the special teams coordinator and wide receivers coach at Fairborn High School, just outside of Dayton, Ohio. I run a YouTube channel. You can find it at Coach Bandstra or Nicholas Bandstra. Offer a bunch of coaching clinics and interviews and other just random football stuff. You can also find me on Twitter at Coach Bandstra. I retweet and post a lot of just random football stuff.
All right. Thank you, Coach. And Coach Bennett?
I'm Mathew Bennett. I'm the co-offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at Clinton High School in Clinton, South Carolina. I don't have a YouTube page. I'm not cool like Coach Bandstra. But if you want to talk any football ever, I'm always up to talk ball. Follow me on Twitter, Coach Bennett32. And hit me up, man. We'll talk some football. Anything you want to talk, as long as it's offense. We'll talk defense right here.
Thank you, Coach Bennett. We have to admit we did miss you in the last episode. And we did talk a lot of trash about you on the chat. All right. And, new to the podcast today is Coach Mills. Coach Mills, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Coach. Dustin Mills. I'm the head coach at James M. Bennett High School in Salisbury, Maryland. I run a podcast, the Anchor Down Leadership podcast, where kind of talk about things that have to deal with leadership and culture building and that sort of stuff. And you can find me on Twitter at Dustin W. Mills.
All right. Thank you, Coach Mills.
Mm-hmm.
I will be actually doing a one-on-one interview with Coach Mills coming soon, so stay tuned for that as well. And last but definitely not least, Coach Steve.
Yeah, Coach Steve. I'm the offensive line coach and run game coordinator at Addison Trail High School. It's a western suburb of Chicago. It was going to be my first year there, and then the world ended, so now we have to go to the spring. I did miss the podcast for Ohio State, so I didn't get to do that. So I'm glad to be back to talk Navy football and talk about how we should just run the spread offense, So I'm here to let you know.
We're just going to make a T-shirt and make you wear that every time you say that. All right. Actually, Coach Steve, I'm just going to pick on you a little bit. Did you remember to turn your microphone on this time?
We'll find out.
Actually, I did the link you sent me. I did order one of those for myself, and I thought when I first ordered it that it said coming Thursday. I was like, "Oh, cool, sweet, that's pretty quick." And I said then I saw it said Thursday the 10th. I was like, "Oh crap, I'm gonna be missing a lot of podcasts without that microphone." But Coach Bandstra, we've been talking a little bit about some fantasy football because we just had our draft, and you said you had a couple complaints about the way that I was drafting.
I'm just going to say it. Something's rigged here. Just as a side note, I mean, he runs the league and somehow ends with starts with the number 3 pick and just rolls out Lamar Jackson, Ezekiel Elliott, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, Zach Ertz. I mean, the Bears defense. I mean, I could go on. I just went through that little conspiracy theory out there that, I mean, corruption of that league. Just saying.
All I did was hit randomize for the draft picks. So that's all I did. That, and then I did my research, man, fantasy football, I started doing it about 3 years ago. And my first draft, I had no idea what I was doing. My first pick overall was Leonard Fournette, and he ended up being hurt most of that season. Guess who my second pick overall was? Because I thought everybody else was dumb not picking a quarterback. I went and got Tom Brady. I'm telling you, I had no idea how to play fantasy football, okay?
Hey, at least you're smart enough not to pick Leonard Fournette this week.
Hey, I almost did. If he would have dropped to like the 15th round or something, maybe, it's a dynasty draft, so maybe he gets picked up. So
I'm just glad he got cut a couple hours before the draft, because had he not, like several of us would have probably taken him and it'd been like,
Well, I had a draft the night before, and somebody did take him in like the 3rd round. I was like, okay. I still wouldn't have picked him, though, to be totally honest. All right. Anybody hear any good news recently in the football world? Coach Bennett, you actually had some good news in South Carolina.
Yeah. It's kind of the reason I was struggling when I was showing up, hammering down a sandwich, trying to eat a late supper. We here in South Carolina got word last week that Monday, as in yesterday, we could basically have as many in our groups, workout groups, as we want. So everybody's got all their varsity out there together at the same time, and still running plays on air, but we can start running plays against the defense on Thursday. So it is good times down here in South Carolina. I've never been so happy to be so tired.
Well, I did tell you I was jealous earlier, but I still think personally for me, I cannot handle heat. I don't do well with heat, especially wet heat. So South Carolina might be a little bit too humid, too many mosquitoes, and too many beachgoers.
I'm 3 hours from the beach, man. The whole beach ain't on the coast. The whole state ain't on the coast.
It almost feels like it. I'm not sure if I've ever been in state South Carolina personally.
I'm sorry to hear that. You're missing out on the best state in the union. I'm sorry.
I still need to come down and spend the week with you, go to the Clemson clinic one time. So
come on.
I'll bring Bandstra and we'll trash your house.
Yeah. Especially
Banstra's
after going digital for next year, I will gladly come down to South Carolina.
Banstra's not welcome at my house. He's an Ohio State fan. We have no Ohio State fans in this house. It's a rule.
I never said I was an Ohio State fan. I said I grew up an Ohio State fan. My current allegiance is there.
What are you, a Bobcat fan? A Frank Solich fan?
I am a proud Bobcat fan. I'm an alumni of that university. Thank you very much.
Solich is the man. He used to run the option, then he got scared.
I have the Ohio Bobcat logo tattooed on my back, my man. I'm a proud alumni of that university.
Maybe a little too proud.
Athens is one of the most beautiful campuses in the country.
Georgia's nice.
Not that Athens. Not that crap hole.
Coach Bandstra, I'll have to take your word for it, man. Every time I've been to Ohio, I hated it.
I'm not saying there's parts of Ohio I would just stay away from, but Athens is just gorgeous, and it's just a pain in the ass to get to. It's a haul, in the middle of nowhere. That's why they can't recruit anybody, because there's no airport into Athens, and it's an hour and a half from Columbus. It's actually better if you fly people into Huntington, West Virginia, and then drive them over. Shorter.
Wow.
I'm just here in Illinois. I don't know.
Athens, Georgia is home to the only establishment I've ever been asked to leave.
That you remember or that you can actually check?
Only confirmed time. We'll have to tell that when we're not recording. It's a pretty good one.
I don't know. Maybe I'll sneak it into the end of the recording. Who knows?
I'll just type it all out in the chat and you can sell it.
Add it to that book that we're making.
Yeah, book, the Zoom chat book that we're going to sell for like $100 once we go public. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and get into what we're supposed to be talking about tonight, which is Navy football. I'm going to read off some stats that I felt were pertinent. Unfortunately, I think I might have went a little too overboard here with the stats. I have about 3 pages worth of stats today, which is a little more than I usually have because I'm just a nerd for stats, and I've been following Armed Forces football for quite a while. So talking about Navy midshipmen in Annapolis, Maryland, and the head coach is Ken Niumatalolo. Yes, that's how you say it. This is his 12th season. That's pretty good for a D1 college football coach. 12 seasons. In 12 seasons, his win percentage, his win totals are 96 wins and 60 losses, which is a total win percentage of .615. Compare that to the all-time Navy win percentage is 720 wins, 570 losses, and 57 ties, which is a .556 win percentage. So he is above average when it comes to coaching at Navy. A little bit of research. Now this is where the stats get a little bit dubious, and I'm trying to ignore I keep saying Twitter. It's not Twitter, the Zoom chat, because they're just trying to make me laugh over here. I'm as a teacher, I always tell my kids whenever I give them a research project never to use Wikipedia as their main source. Well, I literally copied and pasted a Wikipedia page on my web page here, so not seeing much of a problem there. But so as a head coach under Coach Niumatalolo, the Midshipmen have 9 winning seasons during his full 11 years as a head coach. They have played in 9 bowl games during Coach Ken's tenure, including winning the 2009 Texas Bowl, the 2013 Armed Forces Bowl, the 2014 Poinsettia Bowl, and the 2015 Military Bowl. And they also did not mention last year's bowl win over Kansas State, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Navy defeated longtime rival Notre Dame in consecutive years in 2009, 2010. That's the first time they've done that since the early 1960s. The Midshipmen have also defeated Notre Dame in 2016. They went on to a 9-5 record that season. And under his leadership, they have joined the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, after 134 years as an independent football team. Under his tutelage, well, actually, not under just his tutelage. The Navy overall has won 16 outright Commanders-in-Chief trophies, meaning they beat both Air Force and Army in those years. And in 2019, last season, they had an 11-2 record, which is unexpected compared to the record they had the year before, where they only had 3 wins. And we might get into why that was and how they were able to come back with that. So last year, they had an 11-2 record. Their only losses were to Memphis and Notre Dame, and the only team that really beat them pretty soundly was Notre Dame. And they had some major wins. So they beat Air Force 34-25. They beat SMU, who was ranked number 25 at the time, 35-28. I actually rewatched that game just recently. It was a pretty darn good game. They beat Houston 56-41, and then they beat Army in the Army-Navy game 31-7, which wasn't much of a contest this season, unfortunately. Maybe we'll discuss that when we talk more Army football in the next podcast. And then in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, they defeated Kansas State out of the Big 12, 20-17. That was a pretty good game as well. Last couple stats for you here. 2019 offensive stats: points per game, 37.2. Yards per game, 455.8. Passing yards per game, 95.2, not quite breaking 100. And then rushing yards per game, 360.5. I was trying to look online for like the rushing leaders and like the rankings and stuff. I don't know. I think last year they were number 1, weren't they? Or was somebody else number 1? Anybody remember?
I think they were number 1. I can't remember that for 100% accuracy, but that's what I seem to recollect.
I know it's usually a battle between Navy and Army for who's got like the rushing leadership every season. Pretty sure. Recently, at least. Okay. Let's go ahead and get into our discussion. And Coach Mills, since you are since you're new to our podcast, I'm going to give you first shot at answering this question here. So Coach Ken, I'm just going to call him Coach Ken because Niumatalolo is quite a tongue turner if you say it a couple of times on a dry mouth. Coach Ken is considered the winningest head coach in Navy program history. What are your personal thoughts and feelings about Coach Ken?
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Coach. He'll even say it. He calls himself Coach Niumat because he doesn't want to say Niumatalolo all the time. But Coach Ken, I'm a big fan of what he's done there at Navy. I mean, you got to remember, it's not like he was taking over a garbage program. I mean, he was following Paul Johnson, one of the more legendary college football coaches that existed at the time. And, you know, he was taking over a program that had finally gotten some success, and the expectation was he would continue that success. And he has done that. You know, there's been a few hiccups here and there. But I love the way he approaches what he does. Because he also understands what Navy football means to those that are there, but they're also doing something bigger than just playing football. Army, Navy, Air Force, when they're at those places, I think there's an expectation of football is fun, but that's not why we're here. And I think he really helps reinforce that, and just kind of the way his program is, he's coming from the Pacific Islands, I think he's Samoan, but, lives on Hawaii, like really brings that culture to them, that culture of family and responsibility to each other. And, we use the word brotherhood a lot in football, but if you go up there and you spend some time around that Navy program, there's no other word for it, because they are so closely knit. And I think that's because of him. I mean, we were talking briefly pre-chat about them in the triple option. I think that's another thing that he's kind of hung his hat on. Him and Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator, have been together for a long time now, and they're making some magical things happen. But that said, they're not afraid to tweak things. We talked about how they went some pistol last year with Malcolm, just to get him out in space and do things that, to take advantage of his talents. I don't think there's anybody who's married to any idea more than Coach Ken is married to the idea of the program will be successful. The individual will handle that in the respect of, he's demoted people. We'll probably talk about this later, but the newspapers were talking about how Perry Olson, who was the backup quarterback last year, was going to be the starter this year. They go into camp and their third stringer took the starting job. There was no heir apparent. He went out and flat out beat him. So they said, hey, you're a first year starting senior. You're the dude. And there's not many college coaches who have the cojones to do that sometimes. So, really impressed with just the way he handles himself, handles that program. I mean, there's a plethora of stories about him and holding guys accountable. And it's just, you don't see it as much as you would like to in other programs. So big fan of Coach Ken.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Since Coach Schiffman didn't make it today, I'll probably take his place. I've never met the man before. But from everything I've seen, I've listened to a lot of speeches he's made. I've watched a lot of their games, a lot of the interviews he's ever been in. Most recently, I was on YouTube and I watched a little bit of there was one free episode of that Stars Network TV show. Was it Stars, or it was one of those network TV shows? It was a season with Navy football. And he's just the kind of guy, like, they literally just harped culture. And I've been doing a lot of research about culture the last off season, and like everything that these guys are saying is you will know when the culture has taken hold when the players start spouting out what you're saying all the time. And you're just watching the interviews of the players and listening to it talk to each other, and they're talking to each other using the same words that Coach Ken uses the whole time. And you can tell I hate the word brainwash, but they have that program brainwashed. And now I don't know if it's the program that's brainwashing the kids, or they're able to recruit kids who are easily integrated into that system. It might be a little bit of both. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But everything I've seen from the guy, he's definitely somebody that if I had a son who was old enough to go to play college football, I would want him to go there to play with Coach Ken. So, Coach Steve, personal thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head. Some of the things I want to say we're going to answer later. But, I mean, you never hear anything bad coming out of the program. I know the last time I was near Ohio State, there's some shady things that have tagged on with Urban Meyer, not to get, back on that. But you don't hear anything about that. Culture will be brought up again. And, he gets the type of kids that are, they're there for a reason, and he's able to tap into that and get their respect and what they're about to go into that teaches them. So he's good at building, boys into men and helping out that program. And I think he's very loyal, because we'll get into it again, but he's been there a while. For some reasons that may not have been his own reasons, but he's still very loyal. He was there before he was a head coach. So he's very loyal. He cares about the program more than, the name on the back of the jersey. It's the name on the front. So it just seems like he's a guy that you'd run through a brick wall for when, you're out there playing for him.
All right. Thank you, Coach Bandstra.
I mean, he's done I talked to a college coach this offseason about mirroring your program to your school. And I think he's done the perfect job of his culture mirrors their school. Like, he doesn't try to be something different than his school is. He tries to make sure that his program represents the values of the Naval Academy. And like a couple of these other coaches said, I've never met Coach Ken, but I've never heard a bad word come from anybody that's ever met him. They've always said his staff's very welcoming. A buddy of mine just called over there this offseason and asked if they just do a Zoom with their staff, and they did. Like, it's a good time. I love this chat so much. But I mean, outside looking in, he does a great job. I mean, he's very loyal, but he also knows when to make a change. Like we kind of talked off air. He made some staff changes after that 3-1 season, and it's kind of paid off for the best. I mean, he's been able to do a great job of keeping his offensive staff intact. And, I mean, there's a reason that he's rumored every year for other jobs.
Yeah. And I think we're going to talk about why he's rumored for jobs and why he may or may not be leaving Navy ever. We'll see. If you guys ever hear – if you listeners, if you ever hear us just giggling in the background, you'll have to forgive us. We're over here just trying to we're talking crap on each other in the chat here. Unfortunately, you can't see that. If you want to see it, maybe we'll charge you and we'll send you the final chat. It's going to be a book at the end. But forgive us because we're talking crap on each other while we're talking. So, Coach Bennett, personal thoughts and feelings on Coach Ken.
Couldn't love him anymore if he married my sister. Love Coach Ken. Leader of men, puts no individual above the team. It's all about the culture, and it trickles over into his X's and O's. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. One of the best program runners in the country.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, he's definitely a detail-oriented coach, which you have to be if you're going to run an option-style football, option-style offense, excuse me. And what I've seen, I saw from that one show, he was seeing something where he didn't like how practice was going. And he stopped practice, brought all the kids in, and without ever screaming a curse word or anything of that nature, ever. You never hear a curse word come out of this guy's mouth. I don't know if that's a religious thing or it's just his personality. Oh, Lord, Coach Steve. And so he stopped practice, and he basically called into question the players' will to be there and their will to succeed. And he said, you know, go home or go to your dorms, come back tomorrow. We'll do this again. Just don't suck. You know, basically attention to details. And you have to do that to run a successful program of that nature. Now, that kind of leads us into the next question. And Coach Steve, I'm going to give you first shot at this one. I'm going to we'll have two people answer this first, and then we'll have an open discussion. Navy seems to breed successful teams without being dominant in the recruiting world. What aspect of the program allows this to happen? And then in parentheses, I had this extra question. Is it the offense? Is it the staff? Is it something else? All right. And Coach Steve, I'm going to let you go first.
So I give a lot of crap about running the spread, and people give me crap because I like the spread. I just like offense. You know, I don't really care. I'll watch triple option. It's a good offense. I think it's a mixture of everything. We keep talking about culture. I think he builds that culture. And again, if you get those kids to believe in what you're doing, they're going to run through a brick wall for you. So I think, you know, the type of recruits they get, what they're there for, he's able to tap into that, the culture thing, you know, and then I think, you know, he has a system. The offense is a part of it. It's a system that is there all the time to hang their hat on it. They buy into it. He gets those type of kids that are, you know, rough and able to run the ball at people and everything like that. It helps them be successful. And when they're bought in, you can do anything no matter what you do. So he's got that thing like a well-oiled machine going. And this chat is awesome.
All right. And Coach Mills, I'm going to let you go next.
Yeah, I mean, as far as offense goes, you know, it's just part of their identity. It's something that, you know, I don't think they could ever get away from, as I kind of told you pre-chat, for a variety of reasons. You know, so I think that because they run that offense, they can really recruit guys that fill in with what they do. There's a school out of Tennessee called Brentwood Academy, and I was talking to a guy who writes for about the Naval Academy for Rivals, and he's like, I've never seen a school that has a relationship with another school like Navy has with Brentwood Academy. And I don't even think they run triple. I don't know anything about them, but they seem to load up with guys from Brentwood and places like that. And, they're getting guys from Texas, but they're getting a lot of these guys that no one's ever heard of, or they're, borderline, what I would call, FCS guys that, they take and then they just make them into something special. And that's really the beauty in what they do is, you go back, you play like the NCAA college football games, right? And you could, with your recruiting, you could put more points towards recruiting or more points towards development. And, with Navy football, they're putting all their points in development, man. Like, they are getting the best they can out of all their guys every time. And if you're not making the cut, then you're not there. And it's, so they recruit guys. You talked about it earlier. Are they brainwashed, or they get guys that are brainwashed? It's a little bit of both. I think they get those guys who want to be better than what they are, and they make them into something special.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree. We kind of mentioned it and I'll let this open to discussion here in a moment. We kind of mentioned it starting this recording that, yeah, they run the triple. They run it very well. They are very detail oriented. But I think if you kept everything the same, but you kept the staff the same and you changed the offense, then depending on what the offense is, even if they went air raid, I think let's go air raid. Let's say they go air raid. I think they could have success running air raid. I don't ever want to see them do that because I love watching triple option football, and we've already lost one stalwart in the triple option football when Georgia Tech pussied out, to be honest. So other guys, you guys have anything else to comment about?
I mean, in the end, it's their culture, and their thing people forget about. Like, and I talk to kids all the time about this, is they don't remember what the academic requirements are to get into Navy, Army, and Air Force. Like, that's a whole separate. Like, these kids are extremely smart. Like, they are the top of their class. They are the kids that you can make adjustments and do a lot of things with. I think that's something people forget about, and kind of the benefit of running these types of offenses or having this culture is that they can, once they instill this culture, they have smart kids that can go run their systems.
High character kids. Boil it all down to one thing. Navy, Army, Air Force, they rarely miss because they don't offer as many kids as some of the bigger schools. They don't offer as few as Clemson, but they're in that. They don't offer everybody range, and they don't miss. They rarely miss. Kids usually don't leave. They get high character kids. They know who they're recruiting.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, even the kids who do leave, Chris Proctor was a quarterback for Navy. If you watch the documentary, I told you guys earlier, Game of Honor, he's their quarterback his senior year. He's a senior, and he leaves the Naval Academy after the football season. Like, you're right. They don't have guys transferring out. Every once in a while, you might see a guy leave, but that's also – if you stay after your sophomore year and you transfer, you got to pay back the United States government the education you just took. So I think that's part of it as well. But yeah, it's absolutely that culture of guys, and there's guys who will sit the pine. We were talking earlier about who they're projecting to be their starting quarterback this year. He's been a bench warmer for 3 years, and he was projected to be a bench warmer again his senior year. My man put in work, came out, and he's going to be, QB1. And you can see that throughout their history. Guys just come out of nowhere. They're starting, I don't know what you triple guys call it, A back, B back, their fullback, what the rest of America calls it, was playing on their JV team to start the season last year. And then all of a sudden he's toting the ball and carrying guys and winning games for him. I think he might have been their leading rusher after Malcolm. But it's just, you're right. They find the guys they need. And it's a great point, Coach. They don't miss.
Is that the fullback? Is that Carruthers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was watching, and if I remember correctly, they mentioned on the video I was watching, the replay I was watching, Carruthers was like Mr. Football in Kentucky when he was getting recruited, and a lot of those guys, they don't go to places like Navy or Army, but somehow they were able to get the guy. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize, again, I'm getting this from watching the documentary and all that kind of stuff, is these kids, these players, yeah, they're getting recruited to play football, but when they step on campus, they are part of the Navy. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what they're there for first. And everyone there makes sure they know that. And one of the things that these kids learn really well is time management, because their classes are very demanding and they force you to learn time management. And that's one of the reasons I think that most of the graduates from these schools are very successful, where others are not. Time management's a big thing that's very overlooked. Coach Bandstra, you kind of mentioned this a little. I think Coach Bandstra mentioned this a little bit. Coach Ken's name has come up in the past for quite a few open jobs. Very recently, Arizona and BYU, but he has stayed at Navy, whether or not that was his choice or not. Would he have been as successful at another program like he has been at Navy? And Coach Bennett, I'm going to give you first shot at this.
I put in my notes for this, he'll be successful. I think what Coach Ken does, he'll be successful anywhere in the United States of America that will give him 3 years. Give him 3 years to recruit his type of high character kid, because depending on what situation he goes into, you might have a mass exodus and you might end up playing with some kids that ain't ready and you take your lumps. But in the long term, I say 3 years, he'll be successful anywhere. Drop him any program in the country. He'll be fine. He'll be fine.
Coach Bennett? All right,
that was Coach Bennett.
Hey, don't confuse me for him. That's an insult.
Don't you cuss the Bennett surname for that.
I mean, I've wanted him or any of the other Service Academy coaches to get an opportunity. I've said that for years. I mean, I think Paul Johnson showed you can be successful until the ACC kind of set up schedules so they couldn't win, to where every team got a bye week before they played Georgia Tech. But whatever. I mean, Coach Ken is, one, he starts with culture. I mean, that's the recipe for success right there. And two, I think a lot of these schools that would hire him are a great opportunity and would give him time. I mean, the Vanderbilts, Iowa State looked down a couple years ago, Arizona, BYU. I think those are all places for recipes for success. I mean, I think he can go wherever he wants. I know he's mentioned in an interview before. Doesn't necessarily mean he'll run triple, but in the end, he's going to run what he knows. I mean, especially if he can bring the portion of his staff. I mean, we kind of talked off screen, like Ivan Jasper, his OC is a stud, and he's done a very good job of keeping them. They've coached together for like 20 years. I mean, if Ivan Jasper didn't become the next Navy head coach when he left, I mean, he'd just bring Jasper with him and they just run that offense. I mean, it's not like, their thing is what people are like, they've evolved. Like the first, 20 plays of that Army-Navy game, both of them try to run zone read just so it's something different the other team hasn't seen. Like, I mean, they'll adapt. I mean, I'm not saying they're necessarily just not going to go triple, but they'll adapt. I mean, that's what Tulane's head coach did. He ran straight triple at Georgia Southern. He now runs essentially like a spread read option at Tulane. Like, they'll adapt if they have to. I think in the end, you're hiring Ken Niumatalolo for culture. Not about his offense, not about his defense. It's about culture and what he will instill in his program.
Any other thoughts?
I think Coach Bandstra just made a great point about them adapting. But if you watch them, they're one of the best coaching staffs at adapting in game. And that's really, I think, I was at the SMU game last year, and SMU was pushing them all over the field, and just their offense wasn't moving the ball. And they came out the second half, and everything looked the same. But, they started hitting them with all sorts of different stuff. And, it was amazing just to watch that adaptation. They ended up winning the game. in the fourth quarter, and it was a phenomenal game to watch just from a pure coaching perspective, because they made those changes and they're not afraid to make those changes. Sometimes I watch these Power 5 guys, and you can tell that they're sometimes, I don't want to say scared, but they're going to get hammered in the post-game press conference if they do certain things. And that might be one of the luxuries of coaching at AAC football and, in service academy, but, they're not afraid to do much of anything if they think it's going to help them win the game. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it is.
I just put it in the chat, and I'll church it up for the listeners so I don't say everything I said in the chat. But all jokes aside, Navy, when they back the quarterback up and they get in the gun, their package of plays they run, especially when they've got that dude back there that can deal it, at the quarterback spot, it is beautiful, beautiful stuff. And any spread coach worth of salt should look into it, especially if you got an athletic quarterback, because they put people in binds. And like Coach Neal said, I've seen them hop in the gun just to see how people line up and getting that spread stuff. And then after one series, they're back under center. But I've seen them getting that gun and sticking it for a drive or two because they score back-to-back drives. It's really good stuff. And I've coached in the spread. I don't hate the spread. I just like to give Coach Steve a hard time and anybody else. But, their spread stuff's good. It's really good because they're good football coaches. They're not just good option football coaches. They're good football coaches.
Oh, I also forgot to mention, and this is kind of an overlooked fact, is how much they've overhauled their pass game in the past couple of years. They hired Billy Ray Stutzman from Hawaii like 2 years ago as an offensive assistant to add more run and shoot stuff into their package. But also that's one thing people forget. The run and shoot used to be an under center offense that looked like Navy essentially, except for the running back was deeper. It's same concept stuff. It goes back to the evolve. He didn't like his pass offense a couple years ago. They bring in the Hawaii's receiver coach to add run and shoot principles. It's just another form and our evolution that people just don't notice.
Go back and watch those games when Paul Johnson was the offense coordinator at Hawaii. That's the original run and shoot. They're in what they call their spread formation, which is 2 receivers, 3 backs, and they're doing the run and shoot stuff, motioning and running choice, and he got to where he was doing a lot more option stuff. But like you said, the Mouse Davis stuff. When you go back and watch Mouse Davis draw it up on a chalkboard, he's doing it out of spread, under center spread.
Coach Steve, do you have something?
Well, and people forget when the air raid was being, made by Mike Leach and Hal Mummy, they were under center 2 back and everything else. Everything just kind of evolves and, not to piggyback everything. And then I think he'll be successful because if they stay to who they are, a good staff, it's going to happen. We'll get to that here in a second, about him getting hired. But if he stays to who he is, how he hires his coaches, and they stay together and they do what they do, 3 to 5 years, they'll be fine.
Yeah. And before we get into that too much, I want to ask the question first. And Coach Steve, you're going to be the first one to answer this one. All right. Are athletic directors, specifically in the Power 5, we can talk about other conferences as well, are athletic directors too scared to hire an option coach like Coach Ken? And if they are, why?
So I don't think they're scared to hire him as a culture guy because it's a track record. He's a culture guy. I'm not looking at this chat. I'm going to look the other way. I'm not even going to bother. But today at school, don't tell anybody, during lunch, I was trying to read articles on this, and you guys need to correct me if I'm wrong, but when he was talking to Arizona, their quarterback had tweeted something about he's not going to play in the triple option. Correct. And then all of a sudden the AD said, well, hold on, let's hold off on these talks because the quarterback was going to transfer. So I think initially they might be a little nervous because they're afraid that maybe whatever kid they have, maybe they're transferring or whatever. But I said this the other day on Saturday, if an AD takes a chance on him and his staff, I think they won't regret it because he'll find those kids. You don't need the 5-star kids to be successful. How many coaches out there get those less than 5-star kids and mold them and build them? And who they do that at Navy, so why can't they do that at a bigger school? And not saying he has to go straight to a huge Division I school. Why not go to a Division I and build up to that and get proven? But I don't know. They're a little nervous about it, I think, because of the offense. But somebody out there one day is going to take a chance. You can't keep coaches like him there forever. It's going to happen, but they're nervous and not nervous, but just take the chance on the guy.
Yeah. Does anybody remember the name of that quarterback from Arizona? Khalil Tate. He had like one good season as a freshman in the spread. And what did he do well? He ran the ball, right? He ran the ball. And I'm going to be honest, when I first heard that Coach Ken was in talks for possibly being in for that job, I was like, man, that kid would be an awesome triple option quarterback. And then he goes and says something like that. And I don't know. Before I get too deep into it, I'll let Coach Mills answer this question too. Are the ADs too scared to hire triple option coaches?
I don't think it's that they're scared necessarily to hire a triple option coach per se. I think they're more scared, kind of what Coach Steve alluded to, with it's not going to, you bring him in, it's going to change what you do, and it's going to take time. It's not an instant fix. And that's the unfortunate thing now. I mean, these ADs and these college presidents are looking for win now guys. And, I don't think Coach Ken is a win now guy, because I don't think that's who he is. I don't think he's into winning now. He's into building his culture, as we've talked about, building his systems in place that really help develop those young men and make them, men of character. It would be interesting for me to see how well he can do outside of kind of the structure of the Naval Academy. I mean, I think he would be successful. We might talk about this later, but I think that's one thing that might keep him there, is that, as Coach Bandstra talked about, the school and the football team are, synonymous. Like, they're the same exact culture, and that really helps bind those guys together. I think he could build a successful culture wherever he goes. I wouldn't be surprised one day if he ends up being the head coach at Hawaii or a place like that, a place that's home for him. And it would be interesting to see if he got a place like that. If you could take Hawaii, which is a mid-level team, on a good year, and make them into something special, because, the culture of the Hawaiian people combined with his culture at that football program could really take them somewhere special. But yeah, I think it would take a lot of, guts for a P5 AD to hire him, not so much for the system, but I just don't think he could walk in the door and win. He might go 6-5 or something along those lines, just on talent alone. But, if you're looking for a 10-2, 11-2, conference championship contender, it's not going to happen with him overnight. And I think that's what might cause some ADs to shy away, unfortunately.
I will say that really, really depends on what kind of program he inherits, because with Paul Johnson, it was almost instantaneous at Georgia Tech. He showed up, and it was like every defensive coordinator in the ACC had never seen it before or never even heard about it, knew it existed. And when he showed up, man, they were scoring points on everybody. Florida State had one of the most athletic defenses in the country. They couldn't find the ball. I mean, but you never know. I mean, I think an AD is too scared to hire Coach Ken because they run the option. You're too scared to win, or that AD doesn't have a long life. It doesn't have a long shelf life. It'll have to be an AD that's established, that he can look boosters in the face and say, "This is going to work. Shut up and give me 3 years." And some ADs, if you're losing a football coach, a lot of times you're not in that comfy of a seat. So I think that's what it would take. But they certainly, if it's a place with enough talent, when Paul Johnson showed it, he got Georgia Tech, man, they were whooping people's asses, including my Tigers.
Yeah, and it's just, how many more Arizona situations are they going to have, where the players are saying, hell no, we're not playing that system, or the coaches that are there, or the coaches that were there at the time probably don't matter because they're getting fired anyways if they're looking for a new coach. But like the athletic director, he's got the boosters up in his face. Like, we don't want to watch them run the ball up the middle 20 times a game or something like that. And yeah, like you said, who's going to be the athletic director that has the nuts to say, okay, we're going to take the time, make sure we build up a program. I mean, look at somebody like Clemson. We talked about this extensively in our first program profile. They were not the elite team that they are now when Dabo Swinney was in his first, 6-7 years. But look at what he was able to do with extra time, right? Look at what a lot of these coaches are able to do when they're given time to build their programs and build their culture. And unfortunately, everyone's in that, I need to win now, I got to make money. My fans are going to revolt if we start running the ball more. Unfortunately, fans, I know we've got some people listening to this podcast who are general football fans. Most football fans don't understand coaching strategy at all. They just see what they see on TV. They listen to what the experts like Kirk Herbstreit and all of them are telling them on TV. And they think they know everything. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on this particular question?
I mean, I've been an advocate of that Vanderbilt hiring one of these service academy head coaches for 10 years. I mean, the thing is, like, if you look at some of these schools that struggle, the Rices, the Vanderbilts, like, academically, they are the equivalent of a military academy to an extent. I mean, obviously, those students aren't learning about strategic warfare every day, but, like, from an academic standpoint and the rigors, like, it's equivalent. Like, and that's what some of these schools need to realize. Like, you want to be competitive. You don't want to go 2-10 every year like Vanderbilt does at the moment, or just insert name here. I mean, they are the perfect jobs, or the 9th best Pac-12 school. Like, it's time to start taking chances. I mean, otherwise, guess what, athletic directors, you won't get fired. I mean, you either need a really good basketball program or a good football program, or you're not making money, and then therefore you're not employed. So they need to figure it out. Like, I think he'd be successful about anywhere he went. Mm-hmm. I think that the other two military academy coaches too. I mean, if you are patient, give them time, they'll win. I mean, I don't know if they'll have immediate Paul Johnson success. It'd be fantastic if they did, but with his again, we've talked about culture defeats strategy briefly on here. In the end, that's true to an extent. Like, if he brings his culture and has a plan to hire good people, they'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. I was getting ready to say that athletic director, whoever it is, needs to give the boosters that book, Culture Defeats Strategy, and say, we need culture. We're not doing too hot. Let's get this guy in to build a culture, and it's going to work out. Read this book. You'll be fine, especially at a struggling school where you don't win. Like, hey, let's just take a chance and see what happens. So just give them that book.
About a book that caught fire in the coaching community. I mean, almost everyone has either heard of it or read it. I mean, I have both of them, and I handed both of them to my head coach. I said, here you go. You'll probably enjoy these. But all right. Also, don't forget, Paul Johnson's still out there. There are other triple option coaches like a Jeff Monken or Coach Calhoun out in Air Force. They're out there. Or the I don't know his name, Coach Bennett. You know him, the coach at Kennesaw State. He'll probably Ryan Bohannon. They run an excellent triple option program down there at Kennesaw State. And
there's a D3 program that's routinely, they were Elite 8 of the playoffs last year, Salisbury University. They're scoring like 60-plus points a game running triple.
Marion Harding in D3 has run it for 30 years. I mean, they give clinics to high school coaches. They come and teach the coaches, like, because we have a triple option team south of us, and they were trying to figure out one or two of our schools to come to help pay for it, because they're bringing Marion Harding up to install the offense and walk through with coaches on the field.
Mm-hmm. Is that where's Harding? Arkansas. Is in Arkansas?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very good. They do things a little bit differently, but they're very good. They beat people to death.
Yeah.
The one common thread I keep hearing here, though, is all these teams run triple seem to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, a little bit less about triple option. The next question is a little bit more about recruiting. So Navy is definitely not a recruiting hotbed. Well, I guess it depends on how you view it. Like we kind of talked about here a little earlier. They, like Coach Bennett, you mentioned it. They don't miss. They get the guys that they want and the guys that fit their program. So you could say, yeah, they don't have the top national rankings in recruiting every year, but like Coach Bennett likes to say, like Georgia, they do the most with the least amount that they get, right? I think I said it right. Is that correct, Coach Bennett?
What are you talking about, doing less with more?
Yeah, there you go. That's what I was
the
talking about.
UGA mantra.
So
I'm glad we're recording. Nobody in Georgia will ever have anything to do with me ever again.
But back in the day, like in the 50s and before then, they were getting the pick of the litter. Think Army, Navy. Those schools were getting the pick of the litter. And look at how many national championships Army won in like the 50s. And I think if you look at like the win percentages of the two schools, most of their wins came way back in history. They have a huge history of wins in the Naval Academy and at the at Army. But they're not getting those recruits anymore. And we'll talk a little bit about why. But what would have to happen for schools like an Army or a Navy to get more high-profile recruits, to start getting the 3 stars, the 4 stars, the 5 stars? What would they have to do? What would have to happen for those types of recruits to start going back to these military academies? I'm going to give Coach Bennett first shot at this.
On my notes, this was my shortest note I made for a question. I put, don't need them. But honestly, I mean, Mills, that's a pretty good one in the chat there. He got me. I think it's happening a little bit now because Navy has put a couple players in the league. And that's ultimately, I mean, if you want to get more recruits, recruits want to change their families' life for generations. And they think the only way they can do that is make it to the NFL. The Naval Academy and Army and Air Force, they're going to do that even if you don't go to the NFL. But now that they're allowing players to suspend service or whatever they're doing to let them go play in the league, I mean, you're going to see some more players get a shot. And I think every time a service academy guy signs an NFL contract, their recruiting gets a little bit easier. And I mean, back in the day, it was pretty easy because Roger Staubach, Mr. America, Navy quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now, it's Navy's quarterback's probably going to be a slot receiver in the NFL, but he's still there. Last time I checked, them checks still clear.
Yeah, because Malcolm Perry, he's on the Miami Dolphins roster right now, isn't he? Still there. He's still. I don't know if they've made any cuts yet, but and who was the quarterback 2 years ago, or not 2 years ago, but
Keenan Reynolds.
Keenan Reynolds. He had his own stint in the NFL as well. I think
he's a cheat code. He's a cheat code.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I loved watching him play. I loved watching Malcolm Perry play too. They were both. Nothing against Zach Abey. I mean, he was a great quarterback.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the same kind of wheels that Malcolm Perry or the other guy had.
If you've coached in the option, when you're coaching in the option, you dream at night about having a kid like Malcolm Perry who could miss a read and make a guy miss and still score from 60. I mean, Keenan Reynolds same way. They didn't miss a ton of reads, but I mean, I've seen busted plays where they read 1, 2, 3 on a pass concept, nobody's open, they just take off running, and missing the dive key on the inside veer and still just, I'm just going to take it and hit the hash anyway. That's amazing. It's amazing to watch him do it.
I was sitting there watching him play on the video earlier today, and I said, he reminds me, Malcolm Perry, he reminded me of what Lamar Jackson was able to do in the NFL. Like if you want like a comparison to what they were like, I think he was like a Lamar Jackson, but in a triple option offense.
I was thinking like Michael Vick.
That too. The closest you're ever going to get to a triple option offense in the NFL is what the Ravens are doing right now. That's the closest you're ever going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And it works pretty damn well. That's why I picked him up in our draft, Coach Bandstra.
Yeah, I was very aware of that.
I saw like all the running backs were gone. I was like, oh, Lamar Jackson's basically a running back, right? So just picked him up.
I mean, that running back field was thin this year. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of it was iffy.
A screaming hot take from Sheffer. We're going to end up on damn CNN for that shit. Calling Lamar Jackson a running back.
Oh, wow. So like you said, I think, yeah, they have kind of loosened up their requirements for after graduation. I think it was for a while you had to serve at least 2 years to pay back for your education. But because they've had some guys who were NFL ready, they said, well, that's pretty good profile for us, right? That's, 5 years. Oh, crap. Yeah. I think that would scare off just about any high-level recruit. 5 years in the military, they're like, not going to do it. But if they know now that, hey, if you're good enough and you get noticed and you get drafted, we'll let you go to the NFL. And if I believe – I'm not sure if they have to necessarily serve in the military.
They do a lot of like recruiting and like service messages. Like I think Andrew Villanueva, who played at Army, still does a lot of like service messages for the military and some other stuff. I know Keen Reynolds had to like visit the recruiting office every so often or something like that. Like there's some weird rules about it. Like do certain stuff in the off season and still do. It's almost like you join the reserves almost. Mm-hmm. Like that's where you kind of get put to as long as you are on a contract.
I mean, shit, sign me up for that. I mean, you're telling me I could get a Navy education or an Army or an Air Force education, have a shot at going to the NFL if I'm good enough, if I prove myself. Then all I got to do to pay that back is help you recruit a little bit. I mean, sign me up. I mean, that's a guaranteed job anyways. Let's say you're not good enough for the NFL and you learn quickly you're not good enough for the NFL. You're going to have some kind of guaranteed job, and that's going to change you and your family's life. Like I think Coach Mills said it a minute ago.
Well, that's what people don't realize is like you can retire after 20 years in the military. Okay. That means these kids are done at 38. Mm-hmm. Okay. Done at 38. You've retired from your first job. You now with all of your experience can get another job. And like by the time you're 60, you have 2 retirements. I mean, I work by Wright Pat Air Force Base. Like the amount of retired military personnel around here who have a second job, who make good bank because they have security clearances, is ridiculous.
My dad was career military, retired after 20. He's now on his 3rd career. He's going to have, when he's done, 3 fully vested retirements. And he's just turning 60. Like it's a great point. I know it's tough to sell 18-year-olds on retirement. But it is, it's part of the package they offer, I think the whole being able to go right into the league is really helping guys. I mean, we're actually seeing a lot of footage from Malcolm Perry catching balls from Tagovailoa down there. Like, they're really, I think he's got a good shot, not just to make the team, but actually see time. And, that's going to be huge for them. Keenan Reynolds was one of the, quote unquote stars of the early XFL, last year. So I think getting those guys in, I think they just signed, somebody just picked up a Navy tight end who's been out of the league for like 3 or 4 years, but you're going to be able to take him and make him into something special. I don't think personally that those 4 or 5 star guys will ever go to Navy. I think because of the lifestyle of being at the Naval Academy, I think that for a lot of kids, that's a real big turnoff because like, as we talked about, it's a true commitment. Like you're not just playing Navy football, you're living that Navy lifestyle. And that's gotta be a thing that they've got to buy into. I would love to see it happen. I'd love to see a blue chip guy walk in there and just ball out. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But a man can dream.
I think the other thing is, like, you need to sell those Navy Army game promos better. Like, I don't know if any of you have ever watched them, but I sat down one day a couple months ago just because it's COVID and I needed something to do. And I watched like 7 straight CBS, the opening things for the Army Navy
Mm-hmm.
game. They're all fantastic. Like, you're like, if you don't have, like, just feel something watching those, you don't have a soul. I mean, you really don't. Like, it's just like, it shows. I mean, yes, I live in Ohio, and the Ohio State Michigan game is one of the biggest rivalry games every year, blah, blah, blah. But I've said it on this podcast before, and I've said it on other podcasts. The Army-Navy game is the best rivalry in the country. It is the only rivalry where you have both men on both sides fighting. They're willing to die for the country, and your stands are essentially full military cadets. Like, to an extent, like, you can't match that. Like, sell that game even more than you do now. And then kind of just to piggyback off this question is, it's still going to be hard with their academic requirements. It just is. Like, I mean, you can get better recruits in there, but in the end, like, military, especially our military academies, they have a very high standard for those who become officers.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other comments?
I'm going back to triple option after all this abuse today.
The abuse he's talking about is the Zoom chat. We've all been commenting, talking about spread offense. And hey, I will say, look, dude, doing the research for this episode, just watching the videos and all that kind of stuff. I have, I ran a blog called Obsessed with Offense before, and like, I made it well known that yes, I do like the old school offenses. Yes, I do like the wing tee. I do believe in it, but I love all offense. I'll watch every offense play, and I just love learning about it. But man, I was sitting there, I caught myself drawing up triple option plays again today. Do you guys ever do that? Like, you get bored and you end up somehow with a pen and paper in front of you and you just draw up plays. Like,
this remote learning shit, yeah.
Even plays that you've known about forever, like inside veer and all that kind of stuff, I still draw that shit up.
I draw stuff up all the time because I've coached in the damn air raid, power spread, split back veer, flex bone, double wing. Now we're pistol wing tee, dude. I draw up all kinds of shit at all kinds of formations. That's why, it's scary sometimes. You get lost in the clouds.
I'm just an old gap scheme coach. I can only draw power so many times.
I have no idea how many times I've drawn up buck sweep, like in different formations, out of shotgun, pistol, under center, all the different like formations that the defense can run. I don't know how many times I've done it. It's too much. But all right. I think we kind of talked about this a little bit before. Coach Mills, I'm going to give you first shot at this one. If they kept everything the same at Navy except for the offense, let's say they changed the style of offense. Let's say they went air raid, just go 100 full 180. They go from triple option all the way to the air raid. Would they be as successful at Navy if they changed to the air raid?
Yeah, if we want to let the commies win. No, I think that, short answer is yes, but it would take time. It would be quite the growing pains. And, as kind as we talked about pre-recording is, it would change their identity to something that I don't know if that's what they want to be. That's American right there. I think that part of playing in that triple option is the fact that it's a bit of, an underdog offense that you don't see around, and it gives them kind of a unique angle. And it's a gritty offense, and that's what they have is they have gritty guys. I mean, sure, you have the triple option with some historic studs. I mean, Eric Crouch with Nebraska was making guys look dumb running the triple. But at the end of the day, it's not really about all that. It's about just how many 2-yard, 3-yard plays do you see in a triple option offense, and all of a sudden they bust one for 20. And like, that's what they're all about, is just that mental toughness, that grittiness. And I don't know if you get that necessarily from the air raid sometimes. As much as I love Mike Leach and what he does, X's and O's wise, I don't know sometimes if they kind of possess that same level of attitude, that you get out of the triple. So could they be successful? Yes, given time, I think they would be, because I think that's just who they are as coaches. But I don't know if it's necessarily in their best interest to do something like that. And, they've dabbled, and I think they'll always dabble, as we talked about earlier, with different formations, and they might even run some spread concepts out there. But, I don't think that's necessarily what they hang their hat on. They're going to hang their hat on running, QB midline and just, pounding it up in there. And that's their power football, with some play action over top of it. So, yeah, they could be successful just because they're that good, in my opinion, but I just don't see it being a real thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Coach Bandstra?
No, I mean, I think the closest thing they could do is that spread option that Tulane runs, but I don't. No, I don't. I said this before we started. Todd Berry at Army. I mean, I know it wasn't the spread offensive today. I get it, but one, I don't think it'd be accepted. I do not at all. They're part of the culture. It will always be the part of the culture of the military academy. Is the closest. The only one that kind of dabbles in some of that stuff is Air Force. Air Force is kind of their own little weird offense, but Army, Navy, they are the triple schools. That's what they will always be. That is part of their culture. I do not see them being successful otherwise. I just can't. It just doesn't work. I mean, that and what, again, the easiest way to offset that arguable talent gap that they have, especially them being in a full conference now, is running veer, midline, rocket, belly. I mean, that, and we talked a little bit about this chat. Everybody thinks they just run veer and midline. They don't. They have plenty of other plays. Rocket sweep, belly is such a beautiful play. And as I said in this chat, for you spread guys, that's like ISO. Okay. But no, I don't think they could be. And I really don't want to live in a world where I have to watch military academies try to run this true spread. I won't watch them run veer, rocket toss, and especially Army and Navy playing together.
Oh God. I know we're going to talk about it when we talk about Army, but again, rewatching Army versus Michigan last year, I know they lost that game. We'll talk about that more, but how many times did they have to run belly in that game? And they got 3 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 2 yards, 4 yards, and they kept Michigan off the field and almost upset Michigan. Would it have truly been an upset at that time? I don't know. Not according to me. I picked them to win that game. Anybody else have any other comments about Navy and their offense?
Navy should always run the triple. It should be signed into federal law.
I was going to say, let's not forget the last time the service academies tried to go pro offense. The 90s was a very, very dark time for Army and Navy football, and they were in, pro offenses, for lack of a better word. So there's a reason they transitioned to the triple, and there's probably a reason they should stay in the triple as well.
All right. So I did send you guys the schedule for this upcoming season. So if you have a chance, go ahead and take a look at it. And Coach Bandstra, I'm going to give you first shot at this. Looking at the 2020 schedule, are there any games that you look forward to? And here's their schedule. Coming up soon, on Monday, September 7th, they have BYU at home. Then they go to Tulane. Next game is at home versus Temple. Then at Air Force, which is weird because Air Force only has 2 games on their schedule for the season, but we'll see how that works. Then at East Carolina versus Houston at home, at SMU versus Tulsa versus Memphis, at South Florida, and then versus Army. So what games on the schedule are you most looking forward to?
I'll go in reverse order. My second favorite game on that schedule is Tulane. I just love Tulane. I mean, I know their line coach. He's a very good dude, Cody Kennedy. He's fantastic. I've met a couple of their staff members through Zoom calls. Like, they're just good staff, and I think that'd be an excellent game. Like, that's probably their second most competitive game on that schedule, maybe the first. And then obviously the one's the Army-Navy game. I've professed my love for that game. Like, I don't care if one of them's bad. It's still a game. Like, it's still beautiful. It's still got the utmost highest stakes on it. I'll phrase it that way usually. I mean, unless Air Force has somehow beaten both of them that year. I mean, it is the pinnacle game. I mean, leaving politics out of it, I don't care what you think of our president. That's your business. But what other game it's called the Commander-in-Chief Trophy that's on the line. What other game is our president of the United States, doesn't matter his political party, shows up to the game. Like, that shows how important the game is. Like, it is the game. And like I said, I love the CBS about 10-minute promo video to start it. It's always fantastic.
All right. Coach Bennett?
I got some games circled. Obviously, Army-Navy games, one of the best days of the year. I have down Tulane's tough because Willie Fritz knows the triple, and he gives them some fits. I'm sure he's heavy in the defensive meetings that week. Air Force, it's always a fun game to watch because they do a lot of different stuff. It's not like when they play Army and they're like looking at each other in the mirror. It's a little different. The ECU game is going to be tougher this year than it has been because Mike Houston's a rock star. And Mike Houston knows the triple because they ran it when he was at Lenore Ryan and at the Citadel. It won't take him long to get ECU to where they're a lot more competitive. The game that I have circled, probably not everybody else does, they play Southern Florida late in the year. Jeff Scott, obviously, I'm a big fan. He's a Clemson guy. They also play the Citadel early in the season. They will have seen a triple option team before they play Navy. And that UCF's got some studs, or not UCF, USF. USF has some studs, and they gave Navy fits last year for early in the game. That was a game where Navy jumped in the and whoever they play in the conference championship game, because I think that's where they'll end up.
All right. Real quick, Coach Bennett, I apologize. I think my internet pooped out on me in that last 30 seconds of whatever you were saying, so I don't think we caught that on recording. Is there a quick abridged version of what you just said?
South Florida will play Navy better this year because they play the Citadel early in the season. It will be the second triple option team they see in the Citadel. Those guys do a fantastic job, and it will be a little bit slower hitting version of Navy. So they'll have an idea. It won't be like they've never seen it before.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I don't know what it is, Coach Bennett. I think my internet's pooped out when you were talking a couple times. Maybe your Southern drawl is just a little too beautiful for my bandwidth there.
It's a lot for people to handle from time to
time. Coach Bandstra, can you go ahead and take a shot at this?
Going through the schedule and how they're going to finish?
Yeah, or did I already give you?
You already gave me the
okay.
Response. Like I said, Tulane Army.
Yeah. All right, Coach Mills is up next. Apologize.
You're good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy one is to say Army, but that's not even, that's cheating because that's always the best game every year. And I say that as an unabashed Navy fan. I can't believe I almost said Army. Before I talk about particular games, let's just talk about, in general, how awesome AAC football is. I think it's highly underrated as far as the level of play, that because these are some smaller schools or they're, the fourth or fifth or sixth biggest state school in their respective states, that they just don't get the love that they deserve. But there's some really high level football that gets played in the AAC. So watching any of these games, they're going to be decently close. I mean, so ones that stand up for me is that game Monday night versus BYU. I mean, that's on ESPN. That's going to be a huge game. We talked about recruiting earlier. If they can pull that off, that's a big recruiting win. I think actually the Tulane game is going to be on ESPN as well. One of the other ones, I can't remember which one. I was just looking at it earlier. One of the other games is also going to be nationally broadcast on ESPN. And again, that's a huge recruiting coup if they can show up, play well, and look good there. I think Coach Bennett just said something about Memphis. I agree. One of their 2 losses last year was to Memphis. It gives them a chance to, get that back. I mean, the year before, I think they played to something like a 52-51 game and Navy won. So that's going to be a tremendous game as well. And then SMU, they had a nail biter against SMU last year, and I think SMU does some things that give them some struggles. I think it'll be a fun, interesting game to watch. But yeah, I mean, so if I had to pick, Army's cheating, but the BYU game, and I'll say Air Force because I really want to be Air Force because they're only playing those 2 games. So that way, if they only play 2 games, we beat them in one of them. We know who's the best.
All right. Coach Steve.
I was going to say the BYU game because it just seems like it'd be a high electrifying game. The other one I would say is Houston because I feel like that's the perfect game for anybody. You're going to have your triple option under center offense. You're going to have a spread team on the other side. And then I said Memphis because Navy is going to come in and say, you beat us last year. It's going to be, I don't know if you want to call it revenge, but we learn from our mistakes. They're going to come in very motivated to come in and play that game. And then people always talk about the Army game. It's fun to watch them play Air Force too. I don't know if as the years go on, people forget about Air Force. I don't know what it is, but it's fun to watch those type of games.
Yeah, who forgot about Air Force last year? That was Washington State. Coach Leach forgot about Air Force for their bowl game. But
he don't coach defense.
We call a spade a spade. That was a stone cold ass whooping.
Yeah,
I had no idea how to line up against that offense at all.
That was tough to watch.
How many times did Air Force run toss, like a simple rocket toss, and they just got to the edge every time?
Yeah,
that defense was not ready.
They went unbalanced a bunch of times, and they didn't adjust at all. It was just – I've never seen a college team like it. I was like, what? Yeah.
Talking about good old-fashioned ass whoopings, Army versus Houston in their bowl game 2 years ago. Was it 70-14? Army?
It was a bad day for the Cougs.
That was a day when all the triple option guys were coming out of the woods on Twitter.
There's not a more vicious group of people in the United States of America than triple option coaches who tweet about 4 times a year when Navy or Army's getting in somebody's ass. Because that group, they come out of the clouds, man, and they torture the air raid guys. It is some of the best Twitter watching days. It's God. I remember that.
That's when Mike Leach said, "I'm going to Mississippi State." Fuck this.
Yeah. So for me, I will have to say the BYU game. I have a lot of intrigue in this one, because I miss football. Virginia doesn't have football until maybe the spring, depends on what happens with our governors. But I will say BYU because, you've got that relationship with Coach Ken with BYU, and he also has a relationship with the current head coach of BYU. Forgive me if I say his name wrong, Kalani Sitake. I think that's his name.
Close.
And I think that's going to be interesting because I think Coach Bennett mentioned it. BYU runs double wing in their goal line package. And BYU always has good players. They got the older players because they're all going on missions. So, they have that kind of advantage. But I think that's going to be a knockout, slug-out game. It's going to be good. And it's like the only game on at that time. So, of course, everybody's going to be watching it. Also, again, next question, talking again about schedule here. So, again, looking at the 2020 schedule, what do you believe is Navy's ceiling? So how many games do you think they could win based on their schedule? And then what do you think their floor is? Well, how many games do you think they might be able to lose? And Coach Steve, I have you going first.
Of course, you have me going first with this team and this one. I could see them losing 1 or 2 games. They could lose that Army game. I know people don't want to hear that, but that's a game that you never know what's going to happen. One team could be – they both be undefeated going in. It doesn't matter. So they could lose that game. So the floor, I could see them losing 1 or 2 games. Their ceiling, they could go undefeated. They honestly could. Just a couple of plays from being undefeated before. They're not going to have that revenge game against Notre Dame this year, but with everything else, undefeated. Not easily, but it could happen. So I have them be undefeated and losing 1 or 2 games on the schedule. Don't ask me which ones. I know one of them could be Army, but the other one could be a toss-up between them.
All right. And Coach Mills?
I think they've got the potential to – it's just to run the table just looking at their schedule. I don't realistically expect that to happen. There's typically 1 or 2 hiccups. I think, Monday night could be a loss for them if BYU comes ready to play because they're always a tough program. Is Memphis – I think I heard Memphis's best running back is going to now sit for the year. That changes things. So that's a game they probably could take advantage of. Who knows what you're going to get out of Houston. Dana Holgerson they could be really good. They could be god-awful. So they have the potential to go undefeated. I do think they'll win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy again, which at the end of the day is all any of them really care about. But, yeah, Tulane could be a tough one. I'll end up seeing them with 2 or 3 losses. It really depends on the development of the new quarterback as well. Anybody who runs a triple knows the quarterback's got to be the motor man. And if he can't get it done, they could be looking at a handful of losses, 5 or 6 if they don't do it right. But I like to see him go all out and win it all.
Yeah. Me too. Coach Bennett?
I think the ceiling's undefeated and playing Alabama in the first round of the college football playoff, and then we can play the like shit through a tin horn. We can't stop them clip over and over and over again for a week. And once they get on the field, probably be a little different because I don't see Nick Saban not being able to stop anybody when he's got a month to prepare. I think their floor, Mills has already said it, man. The trigger man in the triple is one of the most important positions in all the sports. An option quarterback, if he can deal, you got a chance to be really, really good. But if he's even a little bit gun shy, it can turn bad, and it can turn bad fast. I think their floor, they could lose as many as 4 games.
Okay. Coach Bandstra?
I think we kind of have somewhat consensus here. I think best case they go undefeated. Worst case they're about 6-5. I think realistically, probably 1 or 2 losses. Especially the new trigger man. The Tulane game is going to be tough. It just is. Army Navy, since Jeff Monken's been there, that's a tough game. It just is. And then I just go back to the Memphis game. Memphis is going to be a bitch. Even with the staff turnover there, they retained a good coach, and he was able to retain about, I think, a third or a half of that staff. I've talked to some of those guys this offseason. They have a good staff there. It's going to be difficult. I think they. To your guys' point, BYU maybe, but I think he'll be on all cylinders to go. For that game, I just don't think BYU's there yet. They're better, but who knows? But my guess is 1 or 2 losses. Probably. I'll say this: going to the Army game, they've probably got 1 loss. It's either going to be Memphis or Tulane, and my money's on losing to Tulane.
Okay. Coach Bennett, you mentioned that you think they could go undefeated and actually make it to the college football playoff. I know this isn't a question on our little script here, but is that an actual possibility? What kind of crazy football season would we have to have where the playoff committee actually says, okay, this team is good enough to go to our 4-team playoff? I'm going to be honest with you. I even if they go undefeated and they beat the crap out of everybody on their schedule, I think the playoff committee would rather put 3 2-loss SEC teams in a playoff than see an undefeated Navy play. So anybody else think there's an actual chance of that happening?
Yes.
If they run the table and the Big Ten's opted out and the Pac-12's opted out, that if they run the table, they got to be in, because you're going to have 10 conference games between the ACC and the SEC teams. You're telling me that a potential, let's throw a team out, LSU at 8-2, not playing in the conference championship game, deserves to be in it over undefeated Navy team? I don't see that happening. I think the playoff committee, rather than have 3 and 1 or 2 from each, I mean, I mean, they have to run the table. They're not going to get in it at 9 and 1. But 10 and 0, I think they sneak in the 4, and that would be a great way to cap off this crazy ass year. Navy playing in the. If they don't you put that Navy versus Clemson stuff in the chat. We're not talking about that. That will be in the national championship game.
I think very much so could happen. I mean, like the Coach Bennett points out, like the Pac-12 and Big Ten aren't playing. There's 24 plus teams out of the way, and the Big 12 can't not beat each other up to where everybody's got 2 losses. So I mean, they run the table. Why can't they? Also, you're going to tell me from a PR perspective, you have an 11 or 12-0 once you factor in the Army game and the championship game for their conference. You're going to tell me that an undefeated military academy team is not going to get into the playoff as a 4 seed.
Well, here's how I kind of see it is it's probably what's going to happen. I think Alabama's going to come back full tilt this year. I think they're going to go potentially unbeaten in SEC, win the SEC championship. What's probably going to happen? Well, again, Georgia we'll have to see because they're breaking in 2 new quarterbacks. Who knows what's going on down there? I think one of them just got hurt. Can't remember. Let's say Georgia goes to and they win their conference and they go to the championship game and lose a close one to Bama. I still think they'd put Georgia in the they might go 8-2. I still think they put Georgia an 8-2 Georgia in the playoffs over an undefeated Navy. I mean, there's just this bias of the SEC, and it's the schedule. It always comes back to the argument of schedules. Like, well, the Navy didn't play anybody. Well, they played Memphis, they play SMU, they're going to play BYU. Those are pretty tough games, and
a lot of that comes down to nobody will schedule. Why would you? In all honesty, if I'm Dabo Swinger, I'm Nick Saban. I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders right now as it is. I'm the figurehead I'm the most known person in my given state. Why would I want to add one more headache of playing Jeff Monken or Coach Ken? When everybody's already, everybody takes their best shot at the champ. Every time somebody lines up against Alabama, they get the best that team's got. I don't want to add that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, my Mickey's. Yeah, a lot of people don't know what that is. It's just one of my lounge around the house shirts, malt liquor shirt, guys.
I mean, I agree with Coach Bennett 100%. Like, you see what did Michigan in the past couple of years. Like, why would you want to start your season off week 1, 2, or 3 with that? Like, that's not a good life choice. I mean, you're talking about. I mean, you're going to spend the summer on it, but still, I mean, the Army and Navy will either one of them would come in ready to play. No one wants to schedule that. That's why they're. I mean, no offense to BYU, but that's why they're playing BYU, because BYU is an independent and they need schedule fillers. I mean,
Notre Dame only plays them because they have to.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
they're probably like, thank God they don't have. I mean, even though last year they berated them, but
yeah, but most years, especially the past decade, Notre Dame's had their handful. Like, and Navy and Army, they both have been better lately. Like, you're not getting the same old 90s, 2000s Navy. Like, you're getting Coach Ken is recruiting his butt off. He's got great staff. They've got more wrinkles than they ever have. And like I've already talked, they run the crap out of belly, which is such a beautiful play that it's not even funny.
When they played Michigan, and I don't know if any of you guys watch or partake in any Barstool sports stuff, but the owner, Dave Portnoy, he's a Michigan guy. When they played Michigan, they fed into the Army locker room. And when Jeff Monken told his guys, Michigan's about to see the last of the hard, they put the camera back to Dave Portnoy and he said, I'd like to change my pick. I think Army's going to win the football game. When that happened, I told one of my buddies, I said, Jeff Monken just single-handedly killed the chance of any other Power 5 school scheduling his ass, because that damn pregame speech, anybody who saw that 15-second clip ready to run through the wall, I can't imagine what it's like Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday practice. And that's Monken. Coach Ken does. I mean, they do it different ways, but they're cut from the same cloth, man. I don't know. I mean, Michigan and Oklahoma, Army's proved the last couple of years they've come within a gnat's ass hair of beating both of them. Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Two reasons why teams won't schedule these service academies, other than what we talked about, are, App State and North Dakota State. App State beating Michigan was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and it probably set back college football by about 15 years, just because, no one wants to schedule these teams that could beat them. And then, North Dakota State, well, they're just making pelts out of P5 schools. Yeah, there you go. It was one of the greatest moments, of sports history. And it was phenomenal, but it just, that's why they don't schedule these, and it's unfortunate, because I think we could see some really cool games happen, like we're seeing with Army. But yeah, they don't want to take the risk, especially when, that game in September could ruin their chances in November, December. It's not worth it for them, despite what, the viewing public might want to see.
That's another thing to consider. And even if you're not Alabama or Clemson, I mean, if you're Gus Malzahn at Auburn and you lose to Navy on September 26th, it don't matter what you do the rest of the year. You're not getting in the playoff unless you run the table and win the SEC. And then even at that point, somebody's going to point back and say, oh, it's Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hope they go undefeated and go to the playoff. And tell Coach Heath, tell him to loop in that clip of Nick Saban shit through a 10-horn Georgia Southern clip. That would be, tell him to put it at the end of the episode so everybody knows what the hell we're talking about. Last time Saban coached against a triple option team, except for last year against the Citadel. We're not giving enough love to the Citadel guys, man. They do a great job down here.
You're good point.
Maybe we'll have to talk more Citadel on the next podcast when we talk more about Army too, because Citadel and Army play each other.
Yes.
That's going to be an interesting game. All right. So, you know what I forgot to put on we do this on every program profile. Favorite players and favorite moments in Navy history, all right? Or anything who's the player you think of when you think of Navy? What are the moments you think of when you think of Navy football? And let's just go down, since I didn't have this one done, my bad, guys. Let's just go down alphabetical order. Coach Bandstra, who do you think of, and what are your moments that you think of?
Because I didn't even think about this before, and I my gut says Keenan Reynolds, just because that boy was electric. I mean, but in all honesty, when I think Army, Navy, or just any of these military academies, I don't think necessarily one player. That just doesn't, it's the team as a whole, or the coaches, or those. That's where I go to. It's it's a different school. You view them differently. You have people that are going to defend your country for the next 10 to 20 years, who are willing to sacrifice everything. And yeah, it's hard. I mean, like I said, you can go Keenan Reynolds, Malcolm Perry, a bunch of others. I mean, I could start listing fullbacks. But yeah, and then The moments, the Army. Like I said, I almost sound like a redundant, just wheel talking in circles. But I go back to all the Army Navy games. Like they're just fantastic. They're emotional. It's great watching that whole game, and then at the end they both sing each other's fight song. Like they get the fight songs and going, and like it's just like it is a special game. And like, I can go back to where they played some team close or upset our teams, but those are the games.
All right. And Coach Mills?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say.
Alphabetical order.
I'm a social studies teacher.
I promise you I haven't had any drinks tonight. I don't know what's wrong with me. Coach Bennett, I am sorry.
Malcolm Perry, so Coach Mills can't take him, is my favorite Navy player. Favorite moments other than the Army-Navy game, because Banstra's beat that drum. I will go last year against Tulane, where they basically put on a clinic of running trap and ran it several times for several big plays. And just as an O-line guy, just see trap executed that well, that many times was phenomenal. And last year in the bowl game, winning a bowl game on halfback pass against Kansas State, when on paper you shouldn't even be on the field with them because they play in the Big 12, and they're contrarian offense too. So that was a really fun game to watch. And just for Coach Ken just to lay it out on the table and say, here it is, boys, we're gonna beat you, and we're gonna do it with rocket pass. That's amazing.
Yeah. All right. Now, Coach Mills.
I see, Coach Ben, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I can see how you think I would have taken Malcolm Perry, but as someone who grew up in Navy families and a lifelong Navy fan, I was already planning on going B-back. I just want you to know that. We're going, yeah. Kyle Eckel.
I got him.
Kyle Eckel played B-back for them early on, and Paul, in the early 2000s for Paul Johnson, was kind of the first B-back to put him on the map, and he just straight ran over dudes. Like, he wasn't the B-back who was going to cut and run by you. He was the B-back who kind of said to him, I'm running through you. Ended up getting a couple shots in the league, but he just was a phenomenal guy and played hard for him. Same thing with Alex Teach, played on that 2011 just terrible Navy team. Actually got suspended for a game as a senior captain and leading rusher, but he ended up being a Navy SEAL. Like, he kind of epitomizes what the Navy football program is all about. I mean, he was just a baller, and those two guys, I just love the way they played that B-back spot. And I've got a ton of great Navy football memories. The one I'm going to tell you is one I actually missed. So, try to keep this long story short. I worked in politics for a hot second because I hated myself. And the politician I was working for at the time held a fundraiser. And mind you, he was in the Navy Reserve, held a fundraiser on the same day as the Navy Notre Dame game. In 2007, where Navy won in triple overtime. Guess who didn't get to watch that game because I was at a stupid fundraiser for a guy I ended up quitting on 3 months later. Yeah, this guy. So, that was they hadn't beat him in, I can't remember how long it had been, but triple overtime.
44 years.
Right.
I think it was 44.
Something like it. Ridiculous amount of time, almost as long as it took Army to beat Navy again. So I wasn't there for that. I didn't get to enjoy that moment. But yeah, so that was that's my least / most favorite Navy moment.
All right. And Coach Steve.
I'm the worst person for this question. I was going to say Roger Staubach just because this was the first one I could think of. I was like, he went to Navy. But I liked Reynolds. I don't know. Like I said, when I watch Navy, I'm not watching for players. I think that's what's unique about like Army and Navy's. You watch it for, the type of game, the type of atmosphere they play. It's different than watching a normal college team. We're going back to offense. It's just different. Believe it or not, when I was growing up, you always heard Notre Dame playing Navy, or so. Even though Notre Dame kind of has in those games, enjoy watching those games. But I love watching them play Air Force. I love watching them play Army. So that's stuff that I think about with Navy or Army or anything like that.
Yeah. Navy football, I don't really have a favorite player because I like all of them. Coach, but I mean, the ones that come to memory, unfortunately, it's just the quarterbacks. That's the only ones I can think of. I mean, like Malcolm Perry, Keenan Reynolds, Zach Abey. Those are the only ones I can really remember their names off the top of my head. Gosh, there was a fullback a couple years ago that had he was from New Jersey. He had a New Jersey name, just a pure New Jersey name, like Cardona or something like that. Pretty good player though. Memories. Most of my Navy memories are Army-Navy games. Sorry. I mean, that's what I think of when I think Navy. I think Army-Navy. I mean, and especially those pre-game, like Coach Bandstra was saying, those pre-game, the hype reel where they just hype up the game. Those are some of the best pre-games I've ever seen. I don't know if I've ever seen Make Virginia Great Again. Oh, great. I'm not going to get into that. Okay. Final thoughts. Anybody got some final thoughts before we go? Let's go. Coach Steve, what are your final thoughts? Let's go in reverse order.
My final thoughts are I've taken a lot of abuse tonight, but I'm going to wake up tomorrow and go do this stupid remote learning that we all have to do. But all jokes aside, these guys are great. Believe it or not, I like watching those type of offenses. This is a good time. This chat's going to be one day. But when I think of culture, I think of a good, well-run program. One day you're going to see those coaches in the Division I, like a big-time Division I. It's going to happen. Get more crazy than they already have. So something's going to happen. After all this abuse, I'm tired.
Coach Mills, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks guys for allowing me to be part of this. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate talking with other coaches about things other than X's and O's. But yeah, I mean, with Navy football, I just love everything they're about. I love everything about their culture, who they are as people, and everything they do as a program. So like I said, I hope we see a Navy team go up there and do something special this year. But even if they're 1-9, I'll still be cheering them on as they beat Army.
All right. And Coach Mills, you are more than welcome to come back and be a guest on the podcast anytime you want.
Appreciate that.
I'll keep you on the email list.
Sounds good to me.
Like I said in the chat, we'll get you the membership card and the secret handshake, like the Wing T guys have
Mm-hmm.
at the Wing T clinic and all that.
COVID, it's got to be the seck elbow tap now.
Oh, the elbow tag, yeah.
All right. We don't subscribe to the elbow tap. We shake hands. Like Major League, we wear caps and sleeves at this level.
Coach Bennett, any final thoughts?
Go Navy, beat Army.
Hell yeah.
All right. Short and sweet. Coach Bandstra, final thoughts.
Turn your mic on, jackass.
Unmute yourself. That's pure Zoom right there.
Yeah, I finally muted myself, but I got to mute myself. Just kind of second what all of them said. You don't watch the Navy for necessarily players. I mean, you can, but I mean, it's something special. And then just on a side note, we beat a triple option team last week, so it's always fun talking triple option ball.
All right. Well, this has been Talking Navy Football on the Armchair Coaching Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please join us on the next program profile when we profile the Army Black Knights, Navy's arch rival. See you guys then.